Hi, this is Waylon from Swiftwood Bows. Welcome to part 5.
So we've got our bark off, the back is clean. We've got the bow straight, and we've got a good early taper here to work with. So now we're ready to floor tiller. So when we talk about floor tillering, I'm going to put my hand in the handle area. I'm going to put my other hand up here on the tip, and then I'm basically just going to, by pushing on the handle, I'm going to mash the tip into the ground while I'm pulling in on the top limb, and try to get it in the camera view here. And I'm just kind of getting an idea both for how strong the bow still is, how much wood needs to come off, and I can also kind of look at how the limb is bending, and I can see if it's bending all in the handle area or all in the tips. So right now what I'm seeing is a fairly even bend. I think probably it's bending this limb, this limb that's on top right now seems to be a little weaker than the other one. This one seems stronger, and maybe I'm getting a little bit too much bend in the inner third of the limb, but it's still hard to tell at this point. But I definitely know that I need to take some more wood off. So more than what I'm seeing with my eye right now, I want to focus on what my hands are feeling, because I can still feel some slight inconsistencies in the taper. And so more than anything right now, I'm just going to be continuing to hunt down those thick spots and get them more in line with the areas around them. And I'm going to take off a little bit of wood, and then I'm going to stop. I'm going to feel the bow, and I'm going to check the floor tiller. And my goal right now is to continue to improve and refine the taper while taking some weight off of the bow, getting it ready to do first brace, to string it for the first time. So there's going to be a lot of back and forth. I'm not going to show you every scrape that I take off the bow, or every time that I floor tiller, or feel it with my fingers, but I'll give you a sense for how much work I've done to get to where I'm at when I check back in with you. So I'm feeling pretty much done with the draw knife at this point. I'm mostly going to be working with the farrier's rasp right now. I still want to be taking off a fair amount of wood. I don't want to be too delicate at this point, otherwise it's going to take forever to get the bow where I want it. But I also can't just go crazy with the farrier's rasp, otherwise I'm going to end up with too weak of a bow. So like right here it feels too thick, so I'm just going to take some passes off, try to get it aligned with the rest of the bow here, but I don't want to take it too far either, because then you just end up chasing, you're just going to create another thick spot by making this spot too thin. So make sure that you're not overdoing it. As we go along, we're going to get more and more delicate with our wood removal. So as we're removing wood from the bow at any point, but more increasingly as we get closer to the final tiller, we always want to make sure that every time we're removing wood that we're doing it purposefully, that I'm not just taking wood off any old place to make the bow bend more, because every time we take off wood, the bow gets weaker, we get closer to the draw weight that we want, at the draw length that we want, and if we're not improving the tiller as we go along, then we're going to get to a point where the bow is too close to our final draw weight and draw length, but our tiller is not where we want it to be, and that's a recipe for a kid's bow, an unintentional kid's bow, that is. I'm going to work on this knot area here. It's going to need to come down quite a bit. It's incredibly thick there. I'm not going to take it all the way down so that it necessarily matches exactly with the other side. There's going to be a little bit of extra thickness here, but there's no reason to have it be excessive. So what my fingers are feeling here, there's a big knob on this side of the back here, and it dips down on this side of the back. So I'm going to have to pay attention to that as I go along. If I just scrape flat here, this side is going to get too thin, and this side with the knob is going to be too thick. So I'm going to be working on taking the belly down just on this side here where that knob is. I want the belly of the bow to match the contour of the back of the bow. So anywhere where there's a hump on the back, there's going to be a corresponding dip in the belly in that spot. And wherever there's a dip in the back, there needs to be a corresponding hump in the belly. Otherwise you're creating thick and thin spots that are going to make for a bad tiller. And now is the time to be paying attention to that stuff. I don't want to be just taking wood off, taking wood off, taking wood off, and then later realizing, oh crap, you know, this side is way too thick and there's barely anything left on this side. That's too late to fix that problem. So I need to be kind of mindful of it from the get-go. Thank you, Naya. I'm working on my video right now. I'll be in a minute.
Okay.
Okay, let's take a look at how it's bending now. So I was just working on this limb, trying to make it a little bit weaker to catch up with the other limb, improving the tiller as I go. And it seems like it's bending a little bit more now. This is a slow process. As you get more experience, you can do it more quickly. If I wasn't doing this for the video, I would just be sitting and kind of intuitively feeling the bow, taking a little bit off, feeling the bow, taking a little bit off, bending it a little bit. I'm kind of going a little bit more slow and methodical for your benefit, but it definitely pays to take your time. When you get in a rush with tillering, you're going to end up with a different bow than you were hoping for. So I've been working the bow down, just like I was describing before. Feeling out the thick spots, scraping them down, getting this thickness taper closer and closer to where I want it. That's been weakening my bow, getting it closer and closer to being ready for first brace. As you can see, it's bending quite a bit more now. Still not quite there. I'm going to do some more work with the rasp, start cleaning up the belly a little bit more, getting it ready to string. So there's this is a good time, I think, to talk about another early tillering method that I've used a lot in the past, but haven't been using so much recently. But it works, and if you're interested in it, you're certainly welcome to give it a try. It's called long string tillering, and it involves stringing your bow with a string that is loose, that it's longer than the length of your bow, so you have a little bit of play in it. It's not holding your bow taut like a normal bowstring would. And you put it up on the tillering tree, which is a tool that I'll show you in a little while once I've got the bow braced. But anyway, with the long string tillering, you put it up on the tillering tree and you're pulling that string down and bending the bow so that you can see how it's bending. It's a little bit easier to see the bend that way than it is when you're floor tillering because of the angle. So that's one benefit of it. It's kind of more tedious and time consuming, putting the string on, putting it up there, bending it some, getting it down, working on it. Whereas I can, do this relatively quick and get back to work. So that's one benefit of the floor tillering. But I think more importantly, my problem with the long string tillering is that it's going to give you a different tiller shape than a short string. And the reason for that is the long string is pulling the tip more at a downward angle, whereas a short string is pulling the tip in more towards the handle. And so the tiller shape is going to look different. And it's possible with long string tillering to think that everything's looking good, and then you brace the bow for the first time and you realize that your tiller is not how you want it to be, and you have to do some work to get things straightened out, and hopefully you still have enough thickness to do that. If you're careful, it can be just fine, and a lot of people use it successfully. It's a perfectly valid method. But I just wanted to throw that out there for those of you that might know about it, why I'm not using it. I found that it's just as effective to use the thickness taper and use floor tillering to get the bow ready to brace. So that's what I'm going to be doing. I've got a little bit more work to do on this. I will meet back up with you when I've got the bow pretty much ready to brace, and then we'll talk about our options for early string grooves and how we want to approach that on this bow. Alright, I've got the bow bending really pretty well at floor tiller. I'm liking the shape of its bend. Still probably a little bit stiff, but I'm getting pretty close to wanting to string it up and check out its first brace. That's really going to give me the best indication of how the tiller's looking. So before I can string it up, I'm going to need to have some sort of string groove. On this project, I'm opting to cut in some temporary self knocks, mainly because I'm going to be doing some recurving out here on the outer limbs after I get the bow braced and the tiller's looking good. And I don't want to glue something on here that's going to compromise the glue with the heat that I'm using to bend the tips. So I'm just going to show you how to do some quick and dirty self knocks. This is a chainsaw file. I'm not sure what the diameter of it is, but it's been a pretty good tool for making knocks. You can pick these up for pretty cheap, or you can get like a rat tail file or something like that, some kind of small round file. So what I'm going to do is, here, let me bring the camera in a little bit so you can see better. So I'm going to cut some grooves here at about a 45-degree angle, angling in towards the handle. Don't do it this way. Doesn't work. So I'm going to put these temporary nocks way out here at the tip, so that when I'm refining my tips later, that I'm going to be able to make them disappear, because this part out here is going to be really skinny. Alright, so I'm going to establish my roughly 45-degree taper here, and then just going to start cutting in a groove. Now I like to get both of them going. So I can get them. Moose is excited about getting out and chasing the frisbee. I'll let him chill out a little bit. Alright. So I like to get both grooves going before I get them really deep, so that I can get them lined up. You dig one in all the way down to where you want it, and then you start working on the other one. It's just harder to get them all lined up. It's not quite as crucial here on these temporary nocks if they're a little bit wonky, but I like to have everything symmetrical. So I'm just kind of checking to see where they're coming out down here. Just kind of adjusting everything, getting it lined up before I really start digging them in deep. Alright, now that I've got them lined up, I'm going to cut them in deep enough for the string, and then there's one more thing that I want to do up here at the top edge that I'll show you. It's a really important step for doing self nocks. I'm not going to make these crazy deep, just good enough that I can get the bow braced. I don't want to take away too much wood here, because I want to make sure that I'm not going to leave any remnants of the groove there for my finished product. So what I want to do up here, because the string is coming across this back strip here, I want to point out that when you do self nocks, there's always a strip of undamaged back that goes between your grooves. You never want to cut all the way across that. If you do cut all the way across that, the string can catch the grain there and tear out part of the back of your bow. And so always leave that strip there. But then all the pressure of the string is pushing down right on this little shoulder here. And if that comes to a really sharp point or edge there, the string can grab the grain and tear off a chunk on the side here. And the way that you keep that from happening is by squaring off that shoulder, making a more substantial platform, kind of rounding it off a little bit, so that the force of the string is going to be well distributed and not just focused on one sharp corner. The early bracing of the bow is the time that's the hardest on the string nocks. So you want to make them nice and robust at this point so they can survive that pressure that they're under in the early brace when the bow's the strongest. So I think that's going to be serviceable. If I need to make them a little bit deeper once I get the string on there, I can. But as you can see, I don't know, I might clean them up a little bit down here, but they're nothing pretty right now. They're just functional Nocks that I can use for the early tillering process. I'll go ahead and clean this up a little bit and put some on the other side, and I'll show you when I'm all done. Alright, I've got the string grooves done. They are functional, but not so pretty. We'll make them pretty later. Of course, if you're just looking for a rough, functional bow, you know, something like that would serve just fine if you didn't care about how it looked, or if you liked the way it looked, I guess. As you can see, the string's just gonna fit right down into those grooves. So I'm going to slide the string down on the top limb. Well, actually, this is not the top limb of the bow, but for now it's going to be the limb that it slides down on, because I've got this thing to contend with. So this one's going to fit in, and this one's going to be down here. Let me grab my stringer, and we will get this thing braced, see how it looks. So I've got my string on the bow here. You can see that I've got about, I don't know, a little less than 3 inches here between the loop and the knock. I think that's going to get us at a low brace, not a full brace. It's a good idea to brace your bow low, so you can get a sense of any major problems in the tiller before you bring it up to full brace. This is the first time I've strung this bow, so I don't know what to expect. All that I've got to work off of is a nice even thickness taper, which I'm sure you're getting sick of me talking about, but it's important. And, you know, just judging the bend at floor tiller. So I'm going to pop this stringer on here. Just borrowed a string from another bow that's of similar proportions. I apologize if you're at this point in the video and you're working along with me and you have no idea how to make a string. I don't have a string making video up yet on my site, but there are a number of good tutorials out there for making a Flemish twist string, and if you're into that thing, I would urge you to look one of them up. I'll put a link in the bottom of in the description of this video, sending you to a good tutorial until I'm able to get my own up. Alright, well, let's get this strung and see what it looks like here. Okay, so as you can see, this is just a low brace. You know, a full brace height is usually about the size of your thumb sticking up, so I'm, you know, inch or so below that. So things don't look too bad. There's no obvious hinges. There's really just this limb is bending a fair bit more than this limb. This limb is stronger. This is the bottom limb, so it's shorter and it's going to be a little bit stiffer than the top limb, but not that much. So when you brace the bow for the first time, it's a really great opportunity to see some obvious things that you need to work on. So right now, the main thing that I'm seeing from this is that I just need to start scraping on this bottom limb and get it more balanced. So I'm not going to pull this anymore. I'm not going to brace it any higher yet. Golden rule for tillering a bow is never pull past a problem that you see. So I've got an obvious problem here. My bottom limb is too stiff. So I'm going to fix that problem and get it looking good at this brace height before I brace the bow any higher, or definitely before I start pulling on the string. Alright, so I'm going to pop this string off. Let's see if I can do a push-pull yet. Nope, not happening. Alright, still pretty stiff, which is good. It means that I've got some material to work with as I'm continuing to work on the tiller. Got that the wrong way. Alright, I'm going to take some scrapes off the bottom limb, and then we'll string it back up and see how it's looking.